Hi, my name is Lydia. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. If you are interested in true crime like I am, I invite you to click subscribe and come back for more true crime stories. Hello to my returning subscribers. I am so happy to have you here. Welcome. My sources for this true crime are linked in the description box below. As always, I mean no disrespect to any of the persons mentioned, and it is my intention to relay this information for educational purposes and to give a voice to the voiceless. Let's begin. I came across this case recently when I was listening to an audiobook that featured snippets from true crime cases from across the U.S. and throughout the years. And being a 1990s teen myself, like the killer in this case, I was drawn to this story. The killer's childhood was probably similar to mine growing up. And this story starts in 1992, 30 years ago. 1992. Does anybody remember it like I do? Bill Clinton was president. John Gotti had just gone to prison for life. Whitney Houston was the hottest singer around. MTV had just premiered the very first season of The Real World. And yes, I watched that, and I watched a lot of those seasons. And the beating of Rodney King and the acquittal of the police officers who attacked him had just kicked off the riots in Los Angeles. It was a turbulent time. But the Corcoran family lived a quiet life in the quiet neighborhood on Ball Lake in the sleepy town of Hamilton in the state of Indiana. But unbeknownst to the community around, there was a killer in the making living there as well. This is the story of Joseph Edward Corcoran, a mass murderer. Let's start with some family history. Joseph was born to Jack and Kate Corcoran. John, or Jack, Edward Corcoran was born on August 8, 1938 in Cass County in the state of Indiana. He also went by the nickname Corky or Jackie. According to the records I found online, Jack spent the most of his life living in the state of Indiana, although he did live in the state of California for a period of time from the years 1959 to 1964. But in 1965, he was back in the state of Indiana, and he married the love of his life, Kate. Kate and Jack were married on July 13, 1966, in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Jack was 27 years old, and Kate was 21. Kate was born as Catherine Louise Mishler on February 3, 1945, and she was also born in the town of Fort Wayne, Indiana, just like Jack. She was married in her hometown. In 1967, the following year after Jack and Kate were married, their first son was born, and he was named James. Twin girls would soon follow, and they were named Kelly and Kim. And then on April 18, 1975, their fourth child, another son, was born, Joseph Edward. The family settled in a nice home on Ball Lake in the town of Hamilton in the state of Indiana, and they were living a nice life. It is an idyllic area with several lakes, with plenty of lake activities to enjoy in the good weather. There was boating, there was fishing, there was splashing around. It was a great time to be a kid, and it was a good life for the Corcoran family. But alas, we must fast forward to 1992. Joseph was a sophomore at Hamilton Senior High School. He was 16 years old at the time. Tuesday, April 14, 1992, was a normal school day for the students at Hamilton Senior High, including Joseph. He had ridden the bus to school, he had entered the school on time, and he was attending his classes as normal, until the police officers came. They pulled Joseph out of class, and they had to tell him some bad news. They told Joseph that something had happened to his parents. They had been found dead in their home. The police would later say that Joseph didn't have much of a reaction to this news. In fact, he appeared nonchalant about it. Of course, at the time, it could be attributed to shock, or it could be attributed to just the numbness of finding out something so awful. At least that's what the police thought at the time. But by the end of that very same day, Joseph would be in jail, being held on the preliminary charges of murder in the death of his two parents. Jack and Kate Corcoran had both been shot and killed by a shotgun. They had been killed shortly after 8 a.m. that Tuesday morning. Jack's body was found in the downstairs family room, and Kate's body was found in an upstairs bedroom. There had been no sign of forced entry into the house. Jack's cause of death was a shotgun wound to the back of his head. Kate's death was caused by a shotgun wound to her neck. Jack Corcoran was 53 years old, and Kate Corcoran was 47 years old. The Corcoran family had a collection of hunting guns in their home. It was an area that was popular for hunting, and it was believed that the murder weapon had been taken from that collection of guns. Jack and Kate had been killed with their own gun. The couple's bodies had been found in the afternoon by their daughter Kim, who had not been home earlier in the morning. The only other person in the house had been Joseph, who had climbed onto the school bus and gone to school as normal. Jack and Kate did not have any enemies, and there was no burglary, nothing had been stolen. There was no sign of an intruder entering the house at all, and not even had the dog barked. It was just a silent, regular morning. So that left one suspect, one main suspect. It was Joseph. Authorities believed that Joseph got up that morning, shot both of his parents, cleaned up, climbed on the school bus, and went to school. Joseph Corcoran was arrested, and eventually the case proceeded to trial. But what was Joseph's motivation for killing his parents? The only thing that the prosecution could present was that he thought that they were being too strict, and he was angry at them for it. It was really the only thing that they could come up with. Beyond that, the testimony that the prosecution put forth in front of the jury was that Joseph had even tried to hire some of his friends to kill his parents for him, even offering one of his classmates $500 to do it. At the time, Joseph's friends thought that he was just kidding, so they did not bring it to the attention of any authority figure. However, all the evidence that the prosecution presented was just not enough for the jury. They could not cite enough evidence beyond a reasonable doubt to convict Joseph, and after a 5-day trial, Joseph Edward Corcoran was found not guilty. The jury just had a little bit of reasonable doubt, and that's the way it goes. They are instructed that if they have any reasonable doubt at all, they cannot convict the person. Joseph Edward Corcoran was a free man. Actually, he was not a man. He was only 17 years old. And now his parents were gone. He had no place to call home. Luckily for Joseph, his sister Kelly was appointed his legal guardian, and she agreed to let him come live with her and her 2-year-old daughter in a nearby town of Fort Wayne, Indiana. Joseph went on to finish his high school degree, and he got himself a job. And life kind of continued on as normal for Joseph. Of course, the whole family was shattered by their parents' death, and there was always a lingering suspicion about Joseph. I mean, he had gone to trial for the murder of their parents. What else would they be thinking? While Joseph lived with Kelly and her family, he mostly kept to himself. He would enjoy working on cars, but he was mostly a loner. No one would really see him with friends or a girlfriend. He just liked to be by himself. And he just stayed in his room most of the time, his sister would say. And life went on. 5 years would pass. In 1997, Kelly's household was a little fuller. It was not only Kelly and Joseph, her younger brother, it was also her 7-year-old daughter and also Kelly's fiancé, Robert. And another person had been added to the household. Joseph and Kelly's older brother, James, he had moved in as well. It made for a total of 5 people living in the somewhat small house. And by this time, Joseph's behavior had become a little bit more concerning. He had started to exhibit signs of paranoia. He also collected guns, keeping them hidden away and locked in his room. His family would not discover until later exactly how many weapons he did have tucked away. Kelly would later say that she always did have some lingering suspicion that Joseph had been involved in the murder of their parents, but that she had always just given him the benefit of the doubt. She thought he had an odd personality, but he couldn't have murdered their parents. However, she would later say that James, their older brother who had come to live with them at the house, had always held stronger suspicions that Joseph had been involved in the death of their parents. He strongly believed that Joseph might have done it. And Kelly would also say that James would tell her that he had a premonition that someday Joseph would kill him as well. On Saturday, July 26, 1997, that premonition would prove true. It was a typical busy Saturday in Kelly's household on Bear Avenue in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And the small house was even a little more full that day. Not only were all 5 residents home, there were also 2 additions. 2 of James' friends were there as well. And all 7 people were hanging out, having fun. It was a typical Saturday. They were eating pizza, they were watching TV, they were drinking some cool beverages, and just having a good time. It was a particularly hot summer day as well, and they were inside enjoying some air conditioning. At some point, Kelly decided to leave, going to the store to pick something up, leaving behind 6 people in the house. There was Robert, Kelly's fiancé, her older brother James, her younger brother Joseph, and 2 friends of James's as well, and her 7-year-old daughter. When Kelly left, everything had seemed fine. Everyone was relaxed and having fun. But really, it was only everyone except Joseph. Joseph's paranoia had been kicked into overdrive that day. Perhaps it was the heat. Perhaps it was the normal amount of people in the house. Perhaps it was nothing at all. As Joseph sat upstairs, he heard the others in the living room start to talk about him, and it was nothing good. And he began to get angry. And he got angrier and angrier. And he snapped. The following actions of Joseph do not make sense talking about this story 25 years later, and perhaps they would not make sense to Joseph now either. But at the time, they definitely made sense in Joseph's mind. However sick his mind may or may not have been at the time, and they would be actions that he could never take back. Joseph's 7-year-old niece was upstairs with him at the time in the house. He decided to take his 7-year-old niece, put her in an upstairs bedroom, and secure the door, locking it so that she would not be able to come out. And then he went to his locked bedroom, looked among his weapon collection, and chose a semi-automatic rifle. He took the rifle and went downstairs to the living room. There he confronted his older brother James, his sister's fiancé Robert, and James's friends Doug and Tim. And before they could react at all, Joseph had the rifle pointing straight at them, and he shot. They had been in a state of shock, and they were killed within a minute. Joseph shot his brother James in the face. Kelly's fiancé Robert was able to flee to the kitchen, where he crouched in a corner, trapped. Joseph followed and shot him as well. All 4 men had died within minutes of Joseph becoming angry and carrying his rifle downstairs. It was that fast, and it was over. Joseph then laid down his rifle, and he immediately left the house, going next door to the neighbor's house, where he asked them to call the police. He knew that they needed to come right away so that his 7-year-old niece could be escorted out of the house. Who knows what she was thinking? She must have been terrified. When the police arrived, Joseph immediately surrendered, telling them, "You might as well arrest me."
Joseph Corcoran sits in the back of a police cruiser in July of 1997 with tears streaming down his face.
The officer says that the male suspect comes out to him and says, "You may as well arrest me now."
That's because Corcoran admitted to killing his brother and 3 other men inside this home at 1602 Bear Avenue.
There were no other suspects in this crime. There was not much of an investigation. What had happened was obvious, and the culprit was obvious.
Well, this was the crime scene back on July 26, 1997. That's when 4 people were shot to death inside a home here. Now, while the killer was captured that same day, his fate has been and continues to be up in the air.
The city of Fort Wayne was rocked with the news of the senseless deaths of the 4 men.
It was in the heat of 1997 on Bayer Avenue where a chilling scene will take place, a quadruple homicide. Police claim Joseph Corcoran was the man behind it.
It was his brother, James, and 3 of his brother's friends.
Robert Gievers was the prosecutor in the case.
He was taken in then for questioning that evening, and he did make a statement admitting his guilt.
And before I get to what happened with Joseph and his court case, I would like to tell you all that I have found in regard to the victims of this crime. James Corcoran, older brother to Kelly, Kim, and their younger brother Joseph, and the eldest son of his deceased parents, Jack and Kate, was only 30 years old at the time of his death. James was born in 1967. He was a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and he was also the co-owner of a painting company. He had a fiancée named Sandra. Robert Scott Turner was 32 years old at the time of his death. He was the fiancé of Kelly. On his grave marker, it says, "Think of Scott as living in the hearts of those he touched. For nothing loved is ever lost, and he was loved so much." That's a beautiful sentiment. Douglas A. Stillwell was 30 years old at the time of his death. He was a friend of James. Doug was a service technician for a cable company, and he was also an Army veteran. He served in the National Guard. Doug left behind his wife Aggie, a son Brandon, his mother, 2 brothers, and a sister. Timothy G. Bricker was also 30 at the time of his death, and he was another friend of James. Tim was a tree arborist, and he left behind 3 children, a daughter Crystal and 2 sons, Timothy and Sean. He was also survived by his mother, stepfather, father, and 2 brothers. The other victims of this crime were Kelly and her twin sister Kim, who now had not only lost their parents, their older brother James, but they had also lost, in effect, their younger brother Joseph as well. Most of their family was now gone. Thankfully, Kelly's daughter had indeed been evacuated quickly from the home once police had arrived on the scene in 1997. They had been able to carry her out safely, shielding her eyes so that she would not have to see any of the carnage that had occurred in her home. To the news media, Kelly had stated that she now knew for sure that her younger brother Joseph had indeed killed their parents. Speaking about his acts of committing the murders of her brother, her fiancé, and 2 of her brother's friends, she said, "I knew right then and there that he killed my parents. I've cried so many tears, I'm dry. Everything's gone. He's ruined my life. I just think he's sick. I don't know what made him do it. I don't know what it was." All that was left was an investigation and a trial. It would be the second time Joseph Corcoran would be on trial for murder, and the investigation would discover just how much of a ticking time bomb Joseph Edward Corcoran really was. When the police searched Joseph's room and the attic to which only he had access, the search would reveal over 30 firearms, several munitions, explosives, guerrilla tactic military issue books, and a copy of the Turner Diaries. Published in 1978, the book titled The Turner Diaries is probably the most widely read book among far-right extremists, cited by terrorist and racist groups as a Bible of sorts. The book depicts a violent fictional revolution in the United States, which leads to the overthrow of the federal government, a nuclear war, and ultimately a race war. The novel's hero, Earl Turner, seeks to exterminate Jews, non-whites, liberal actors, and politicians. The book is thought to be influential in shaping white nationalism and the later development of the white genocide conspiracy theory. It has inspired numerous acts of hate and terrorism. And it was the definite wrong book in the hands of someone like Joseph Edward Corcoran. When the trial began for the murder of the 4 men, the defense would enter an insanity plea for Joseph based on a paranoid schizophrenic diagnosis. The defense conceded that yes, Joseph was guilty of the acts of murder, but that he was mentally ill at the time that he committed the acts. The prosecution, on the other hand, contended that Joseph was in control of his full faculties and he knew exactly what he was doing on the night of Saturday, July 26, 1997. He knew what the results would be from his actions, and he knew that it was wrong. The prosecution was not allowed to present any evidence that Joseph had previously been on trial for the murder of his parents. Since Joseph had been officially acquitted of that crime, the jury was not allowed to hear any of that information. But it didn't matter. They didn't need it, because the jury found the defendant, Joseph Edward Corcoran, guilty on all 4 counts of first-degree murder. And on August 26, 1999, as it was permitted in the state of Indiana, the judge sentenced Joseph Corcoran to death for his crime.
Gevers requested the death penalty, which under state statute could be requested if the case met certain qualifications. One of those qualifications was the killing of more than one person. The jury convicted him on 4 counts of murder. A death penalty hearing was then set, and the jury recommended the death penalty, which Allen Superior Judge Fran Gall ruled in favor of.
On the day of his sentencing, Joseph Corcoran told the court that he wanted to waive all of his appeals, and his attorney read the following statement from Joseph. I can sincerely say I'm sorry. Not sorrow for me, but sorrow for those who have good reason to hate me, because I am a horrible person, a person who needs to be punished. Though it may not be seen by others, I grieve in my own way. My sorrow remains, and I'm burdened with its shame. My actions were shameful, and they fill even me with contempt. After his sentencing, Joseph was also reported to have said that he wanted to be put to death. However, his lawyers would later say that Joseph was only speaking that way because he was mentally ill at the time.
A court later found in 2003 that he wasn't competent for execution, but later that year, Corcoran flat out said he wanted to die.
We believe that Mr. Corcoran's delusions are controlling his decision-making.
But for the following 6 years after his sentence, Joseph never challenged his conviction or his death sentence. However, then came the year 2005, and when the state of Indiana set an actual date for his execution, then Joseph decided that indeed he wanted to fight to overturn not his conviction, but his death sentence. He wanted to fight to live. And it wasn't too late, because once those legal papers were filed, a federal judge granted a stay of execution, sparing Joseph's death until the federal courts could review the sentencing decisions made by the state of Indiana. And that legal battle continued for years. In the past 17 years, Joseph's case has been heavily litigated. A lot of hours have been spent in either trying to put Joseph to death or to save his life. The case has been heard in Indiana's Court of Appeals and Indiana's Supreme Court, and in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Indiana. Joseph's appeal has even been heard by the U.S. Supreme Court on multiple occasions. In 2010, his death sentence was reinstated by the nation's highest court, overturning a ruling that was made by a lower court. And it appears that that was the last statement on the subject. It appears that the legal wrangling had come to an end. The U.S. Supreme Court had the final word. In 2016, Joseph's lawyers tried again, but the U.S. Supreme Court denied Joseph's request to have his case reviewed for a 3rd time. And Joseph has no more appeals left in the state of Indiana either. What was the reasoning behind all the legal battles? Well, Joseph's lawyers contended that the judge had not considered several key factors before her original sentencing of Joseph in 1997.
Joseph Corcoran, a man who is on death row for killing 4 people in Fort Wayne, including his own brother, has appealed his case 4 times. This week, the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals in Chicago made its ruling on the latest appeal. News Channel 15's Lamar Holliday joins us live in our newsroom with why Corcoran has been appealing this case and the federal court's ruling. Lamar?
Heather, Corcoran believes Allen County Superior Court Judge Fran Gall didn't consider his age or behavior while in jail during his trial before making her ruling. The federal court ruled she did consider those factors, which means he's still on death row.
The following key factors were these: his extreme mental and emotional disturbance, his diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia, his capacity to appreciate his charges, the fact that he cooperated with police and admitted his guilt, and that he was remorseful and that he was young. Another factor the defense argued was that Joseph had no prior criminal conduct, which was laughable if it wasn't so sad. Because of course Joseph had the most significant criminal conduct in his past that one could have, being charged in the murder of his own parents.
But according to Corcoran, she didn't follow certain protocols while sentencing him.
You can appeal his case, or can appeal at least several times, as he has done.
4 times, to be exact. Corcoran said he believed Judge Gall didn't consider his age, he was 22 at the time of the killings, and his behavior while he was in jail during his trial. The federal court ruled that Gall did consider those factors, so for now, Corcoran remains on death row.
As for right now, no executions are scheduled in the state of Indiana, and the Indiana State Attorney General has not asked for a date for the scheduling of Joseph's execution. His attorney has said that there is only one likely option left: clemency. But no clemencies have been granted in Indiana in the past 15 years. But the last execution in the state of Indiana was in 2009, 13 years ago. And as of 2020, 8 prisoners sit on death row in Indiana State Prison, waiting for their execution, and Joseph Corcoran sits among them, waiting in his prison cell, alone. Here are my thoughts. Are all the man-hours, the time spent, the money spent, the legal battles, the paperwork, is it all worth it? I tend to side with the victims' families on what they want, but I just don't know what they want. Do they want the courts to keep going and keep Joseph on death row? Perhaps they do. But do they want to keep seeing his name in the legal back and forth in the news? Or would they want him to be granted a life sentence with no chance of parole, of course, so that he could fade further back into obscurity and they would never have to think about him again? Of course, I know that's impossible, but I don't know. I don't know what they want. I can only hope that they have moved on and that they have done so a long time ago. Joseph has sat in prison for 25 years. His niece would be around 32 years old right now. I hope that her mom, Kelly, Joseph's sister, and Kim, Kelly's twin sister, have all been able to rebuild their lives. I hope that they are living happily and that they can dearly hold both their parents and their older brother James in their memories. And I hope that they can keep their younger brother, Joseph Corcoran, far, far away from their thoughts. He does not deserve to be there. So I turn this over to you. What do you think about this sad, sad case? Were you surprised that Kelly was able to take in Joseph after the murder trial of their parents? I was. Even though I don't know the details of what happened, and I certainly wasn't there at the time, so I don't know. I was surprised to learn that. It also was concerning to me that Joseph was exhibiting such dangerous behavior in the years that led up to the murder of the 4 men in 1997. It was 25 years ago, and mental health topics weren't as widely discussed, but I just wonder if he had had some help, perhaps things could have changed. Was he getting any help? Was anything being done at all? Sadly, I don't think so. Again, I don't know. I think it was only a matter of time before he was just going to erupt. He was going to snap sometime. And unfortunately, when he did, his victims just did not have any chance of saving themselves. Thank you for your time in watching this video. I know that your time is valuable, and I'm so glad that you chose to spend some of it listening to this story with me. If you liked it, I would appreciate it if you leave a like. It helps the algorithm. And if you really liked it, I would so appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel. Come back to hear more. It was my honor to tell you the stories of the victims of these crimes. May their memory be held dearly in the hearts and minds of those who loved them and who cared for them. And until next time, everyone, please, please take care out there. Take care. Bye-bye.